Jack 75. Let's go e4. And again, we see a Philidor, which we've seen a lot, and we know that the move is d4, opening up the center. At this point, I will not spend a long time on the opening. You guys know the drill. We're just developing pieces naturally. And we do know, those of you who were attentive to previous streams, castling here is inaccurate. Does somebody know why? And can somebody tell me how we avoid this particular type of trap? Why is castling a very natural move, not that good? Because of knight takes e4, and then d5. Exactly. So how do we avoid that? Where do we tuck one of our pieces away so that this isn't a thing? What's up, Tommy? h3 doesn't actually do anything against the idea of knight takes e4. We go bishop to b3. We tuck the bishop away. This is a very typical move in many types of positions. And now we can very safely castle. Now, it is true that he can... Okay, he doesn't do it. He puts his knight on e5. That is a bit of a weird move. Because what can we do with this knight? And in a manner conducive to our general kingside ideas, which is to start the attack. Let's go f4, chase the knight away. The knight can go to many different places. He can go back to d7, which is what he does. And now we have to decide how we are going to continue the attack. There's many ways of doing it. There's many good moves here, I think. But one idea that comes to my mind is to prepare perhaps the pawn break e5, trying to open up the center. Well, we can't do that immediately, and I want you guys to be very patient here, because if we play e5 immediately, we will lose the pawn. I also don't want to go rook e1. And the reason I don't want to go rook e1 is because when we go e5, if and when, and he takes and we take, I want this rook to be on f1 because it will be uniquely poised to exploit the opening of the f-file. So this is forward thinking. We want to keep the rook here in anticipation of the f-file getting opened. So this is a pretty big balls task. We can go queen e2, but we know from our principle that we shouldn't assign a task to a piece of higher value when we can assign it to a piece of lower value. And that piece of lower value is the knight. This is a retreating move, but it's a very strong retreating move because we are preparing something very aggressive. But let's not go e5 immediately. Let's not go e5 yet. If we go e5 immediately, we allow the queen trade. So first we're going to get the queen to e1. This kills two birds with one stone. First of all, prepares e5. Second of all, we prepare to bring our queen onto a very strong attacking post, and now we can go e5. Adam, thank you for the prime. Appreciate it. You can see how methodically we're playing here. Okay, what do we do? How do we proceed in this position? And actually, I'm asking you guys a pretty simple question, pretty trick question, because you might be looking for something extraordinary. But I always remind people never to forget about your development. We have not completed our development. We have an entire side of the board that is not developed. Left court, thank you. Queen g3 blunders the queen. We just develop our pieces. Now, yes, we give up our bishop. That's painful because the bishop is skewering the diagonal, but that is okay. No bishop nueve, thank you for the prime. Why is that okay? Because his pieces are all over the board. His knight is in the corner, and now he's going to get blown out of the gym here. He doesn't even decide to take my bishop. What do we do now? How do we continue tightening the screws? We go knight d5. Very good, work. Centralizing the knight. We are not attacking the pawn, but we are centralizing the knight. The knight is controlling many squares. We could have also gone h3 to get rid of this very annoying pin. I should have gone h3. That was a better move. Knight d5 was a little bit impulsive, but that's okay. Because black is so passive here, we can afford to even go back to c3 if we want to, if we wanted. Which is what we're going to do. And I want to show people that it's okay to admit your mistakes in chess. And I guess in life too, although we don't like to do that very much anymore. Okay, now let's go h3 to get rid of this pin. I told you guys a principle yesterday that helps you assess whether pins are dangerous. Does somebody remember what this principle is? Okay. What do we do now? Sorry, I'm getting... FM Peter Giannatos is distracting me. Okay, what do we do now? How do we continue? Well, what do we need to look for here? What we need to look at is the knight on h5. We need to make the judgment that our pieces are so well placed that we can now proceed to basically the kick-ass phase. And the knight on h5 is in the corner and it is trapped. We just win the knight. Are you? Are you here? How do we know if the pin is dangerous? Sorry. So if a pinned piece is defended by a pawn, then the pin tends to be a little bit less dangerous. If the pinned piece is not defended by a pawn, then normally the pin should be considered quite dangerous. That's not a hard, fast rule, but it's a good shorthand for assessing whether you need to deal with the pin immediately. Because the bishop is pinning the knight, but okay, f5 is, well, that's a terrible move because he blunders another knight. Now, a lot of people here would make the knee-jerk response and take the knight on h5, but let's spend a second looking for a better move. If you notice, the move f5 has opened up the diagonal for the bishop. The knight on e6 is protected only by the queen, and the queen is overloaded. Why is it overloaded? What can we do in order to get this queen out of e8 such that it will no longer defend the knight on e6? Come on, guys. Give me the move. Rook takes d8. Bingo. Taking one knight and then taking the other in succession. We're going to be up 2 pieces, and the game is going to be over. Simple and strong. Simple and strong. Thank you, Camazon14, for the prime. Let's keep the hype going. I'm loving it. Okay. So we're up 2 pieces. Negative 1456. He gives us more stuff, but we got to be a little bit careful here. I think we can just take this guy. I mean, he's probably intending queen d4 check, thinking that he forks us. Okay, well, that's just an empty check. We can move our king up. And thank you, Deck Jumper. Now, how do we win a position like this? We win it by centralizing our pieces and essentially going after his king. We don't need to trade anything. One way that I immediately am thinking about of going after his king is to build a battery against the h7 square. Building a battery is sort of one of the key attacking principles in any position. But here in particular, because he doesn't have a light squared bishop, this battery is going to be essentially unstoppable. He's actually helping us build it by sending the bishop over to d3. I would have gone there anyway. And our next move is going to be queen e4 with humongous threats against h7. Knight e4 is possible as well. These positions are so winning that we can basically do anything we want and win it. Okay. He's moving my pieces. Yep, exactly. Queen e4. Threatening checkmate. He's got to play g6 in order to prevent it, which is incredibly exposing. Then we're going to move our knight and follow that with h takes g6. He can take our pawn, but then again, he exposes the attack on the h7 square. Thank you, Barry McCockiner, for gifting to Jay Hubes. Loving the support right now. What's typically more powerful, rook or bishop? Well, the queen-bishop battery is my personal favorite as we get the rook to an open file, newly created. Okay, rook g8 we're going to take. And now we're going to go... Well, we're going to go knight g3, bringing the knight into the attack. He's threatening h4. Let's win a third piece with a fork. There's so many ways of winning this position that I'm not even really commenting on the way that I choose. Now we're going to get... I don't even care about the knight. We're up so many pieces that... Whatever. Just going to get the queen to f6 and just... Whatever. Just bishop h6 here. Forcing the queen trade, which actually also helps me create a pass pawn, which I will promote with checkmate, because his king is boxed in. All right. Good game. Very quickly, and I'm going to do one or two, then maybe switch back to blitz. Essentially, he should have taken the bishop. I mean, this bishop actually won us the game. He should have taken the bishop. But here we play a takes b3, get the rook to d1. And eventually we're going to chase this bishop away from g4. That's why they say knights on the rim are grim. Now, sometimes knights on the rim are good if they're accomplishing something specific. But here, one good way to think about knights on the rim is whether they have an evacuation route going forward. And here the knight from h5 does not have an evacuation route. It is trapped. It is very dangerous to have a piece like this which A is on the side of the board where it can be attacked, and B has no evacuation path. Why not queen h4 instead, I assume, of g4? So queen h4 would have been possible as well. Yeah, this would have... I was a little bit concerned that he would take the knight on c3, though. And now we run into a little bit of trouble. Because our rook on d1 loses its defender. We have to play rook takes d8, and now he takes with the queen. Now remember, he is currently up a piece because he's captured our knight. We cannot take two pieces at the same time, and our queen is hanging. We've got too many things to deal with here. We have to take one of the pieces, either take the queen and then take the bishop, and then he can get an evacuation route for his knight. Or we take the knight, but we are no longer up a piece. He moves his bishop away and he's fine. So the reason I rejected queen h4 is because I was a little bit worried that the rook on d1 would be poorly protected, seeing that the bishop can capture the knight. I didn't calculate this, but it was an intuitive judgment call. Okay? So instead of playing f5, he should have just given up one piece, but he decided to give up two. I mean, that's often what happens when people panic. And that basically was the whole game. I mean, I didn't really do anything specific. I think the important moment was here. I mean, I'm not claiming that white is even better here, but I'm trying to illustrate a concept, which is that when you come up with an idea, you want to find the best way to execute that idea. And the higher rated you get, the more complex the executions become. Here, a lot of people want to go rook e1, but to remind everybody, the rook on f1 is uniquely poised to exploit that f-file once it opens. So not only do you want to position pieces on good squares, and in a sense, using our terminology, the rook has a lot of potential energy. It has very, very low kinetic energy because it's staring at a pawn. It's almost on its initial square. But it has tremendous potential if the f-file opens. And that's what makes it hard to appreciate this rook's power. Okay, any questions before I go on? If queen e2, well, queen e2, another drawback is that in such a situation, the knight on d4 loses its protector. So the reason I wanted to keep the queen on d1 for the time being is that when I play e5, I anticipated the d-file opening. And when the d-file opens, the knight on d4 might be caught in the crossfire. And it would be nice if the queen remained there to defend the knight. Let's continue. Okay, Lexman 18, let's go e4. And let's play either the Italian or the Ruy Lopez. Okay, he goes d5, the elephant gambit. We've faced it many times. Unsound, but not as bad as people make it out to be. We will take on d5. Now the normal continuation here is e4. Yeah, so this guy actually knows what he's doing. And if my memory serves me correct, then we actually do not move the knight here. Can somebody tell me what possible move we have that doesn't involve moving the knight? What is the alternative way? Yep, queen e2. And this pawn is going to be picked off because he doesn't have any pieces out to defend this pawn. What do? How do we get to this pawn on e4 now that it's defended by f5? We don't have much time to waste. We need to operate quickly, so we go d3. Now we continue to attack this pawn. We can take once, but there's no need to do that just yet. So what should we do? And this is actually a very interesting moment. So we could go knight g5, but I would prefer to develop while we attack the pawn. So let's go knight to c3. And now let's take the pawn on e4 once. Let's see what he recaptures with. He plays bishop takes c3 to take away, this makes a lot of sense, to take away the attacker of the e4 pawn. But here's the thing. Remember that we're a pawn up from a previous marriage. We are a pawn up still. And even if we don't get to this pawn, that's fine as long as we can protect the pawn on d5. Can we protect the pawn on d5? Can we protect the pawn on d5? Yeah, so c4 is possible. But I want to look for something better. Because here is my fear with the move c4. If we play c4 and he castles, we're uncastled. And not only are we uncastled, but the queen on e2 is blocking our bishop from developing. So I would anticipate some trouble, tactically speaking, if he gets this big lead in development. Now, this refocuses our priorities. And our priority becomes not saving the pawn, but actually stopping him from castling. If we can stop him from castling, we equalize the playing field. Not only that, we have 2 bishops. That can be very useful in an open board. Can we stop him from castling? Yes, we can. Bishop a3. The move queen b5 is very tempting, but as I've reminded people, always remember that checks can be blocked. When you give a check, you shouldn't assume that the king has to move. Move bishop a3 prevents him from castling by taking under control the f8 square. Now the queen has come out to d5, which immediately signals to us that we can deploy some of our pieces with tempo while attacking the queen. Now, which piece in particular do I have my eye on? And how do we deploy it? Indeed, rook d1. And we can see that his king is in big trouble. It might not seem that way right now, but it is. He attacks our bishop, he attacks our pawn. Can we defend both at the same time? Yes, we can. Bishop b4. Obviously, we give up a2, but as people should be realizing by now, our priority isn't pawns. Our priority is to go for checkmate. And if that requires, okay, he doesn't take the pawn. Now, he actually is also playing quite well, but I think we can make this happen. Now, we want to get the c4 pawn. If we get the c4 pawn, then that constitutes an immediate avenue toward his king. How do we go after the c4 pawn is the key question we have to ask ourselves, and the answer presents itself simply. The move is knight g5, attacking on e4. What we've done is we're buying ourselves time, because he finally goes c5, finally interfering with the bishop he can castle. But it's a little bit too late, because what move can we now play? Despite the fact we ask ourselves the Sam Shanklin question. The knee-jerk response for people is to move the bishop away. But we ask ourselves, what happens if we do it anyway? What happens if we take on e4 anyway? And what we realize is that we create discovered attack potential against the king, which means that if he takes our bishop, we can at the very least recapture his knight with a double check and send his king out. He decides to castle. But now we can do what? This knight on e4 combines with the bishop on b4. We take on c5, we win the exchange, and he's going to be down a whole lot of material, provided that we can complete our development, which shouldn't be that difficult now that we've basically destroyed his remaining forces. Yes, I will show everything after the game. Now, this is a very instructive moment. We are still behind in development, so it would be a good idea to trade queens if the occasion permits, but we shouldn't limit ourselves to that thinking. Our bishop is hanging and our pawn on c3 is hanging. Can we defend both at the same time? Rook d8 would blunder the pawn on c3 with rather devastating consequences. So don't look only at your ideas, look also at your opponent's ideas. The threat is not only king takes f8, it is also queen takes c3. We need to combine both, and we do that by playing bishop to b4, sliding the bishop back again. Do not be afraid of retreating moves. The other benefit of this move is that rook d8 is going to come with check, driving his king out. That's a pretty big deal. We also have the idea of queen c4 check, forcing the queen trade. So depending on what he does, we either go after his king or we go after the queen trade. He can't prevent both at the same time. At least I don't see a way to do that. Particularly, okay, so which one should we go for now? Maybe even both. Which one does your intuition calls for? Definitely rook d8. I mean, this looks like it's very close to checkmate. Check on f8, driving his king out even further. And in such a situation, a lot of people struggle finding follow-ups, and they forget that pawns are full-fledged attackers. When you can't find a way to get to a king like this, you need to involve your pawns. Pawns can be that deciding factor, which turn the attack from just strong to decisive. Which pawn can we involve here? Let's go g4 with tempo, attacking the bishop. Not only is this a good move from an attacking perspective, but if you notice the bishop on f1, we can actually fianchetto it just for a little bit of safety, for a little life insurance. We can always castle short if things go terribly wrong and we need to escape. So it's a good idea to play in this way where you defend and attack kind of at the same time, because then you insure yourself against disasters. If a disaster happens, at least we know that we will always be able to castle. In fact, we can just castle so that we don't even have to worry about it. I don't want the headache of that king being out in the open. Okay, he gives up another rook. He was, of course, pinned, and that's the reason why we could afford to spend all this time. Okay, that doesn't do anything. So let's deploy our last remaining piece, which is not doing anything. And let's combine attacking the king with just taking up all of the free pawns and pieces that present themselves here. There's no science to winning a position like this. Tommy Shelby. Oh, look at this man go. 5 gifted subs from the unlikeliest source. Tommy, thank you. Thank you for the 5 gifted. That 130 hype, we're feeling it. Yeah, I think he is, Huzazi. Well, we don't have to worry about a measly pawn. We can drop our queen all the way to e8 with checkmate. So this is completely winning. Yeah, it's over. We are up too many pieces. He's thinking, but I mean, there's no way he can salvage this or survive for more than a couple moves. Yeah, I'm in Eastern time zone. All right. I blundered a8. I did blunder a8, actually. That's really funny. I forgot that he was... Well, the hilarious thing is I didn't even see that the rook was hanging, but the funny thing is if he takes my rook, we take his knight, and we force liquidation into a position where we're up a rook. So that's actually a good thing. That's fine. I actually forgot that he's attacking my rook, to be honest. I didn't understand what the purpose of b5 was. I made the same mistake I tell everybody not to make. I didn't ask myself what the threat was because I let my guard down. We're up so many pieces that I kind of let my guard down, but as it turns out, we're so overwhelmingly better that even a blunder turns out to be a decent move. Thank you, Natsukist. Appreciate it. Okay. Yeah, I'm surprised he hasn't taken it yet. I mean, maybe he senses something. This move does nothing, yeah. I dismissed it too early, and that's a common cause of blunders. You just dismiss the move of your opponent because it looks stupid, and he resigns. So he recognizes the futility of further resistance, and he resigns. So by the way, if he takes my rook, I take his... I can even take with my queen, which is a funny thing, because bishop take, forks his queen and king. He's got to take, and we're up a rook. Okay, so that was a relatively straightforward game. There were a couple of interesting moments. The first was this move, queen e2, which pins his pawn to his king. And basically, he bites off a little bit more than he can chew. And here, this was the critical moment in the whole game. Because most people would play c4. And that's a completely understandable move. You are defending your extra pawn. But the issue is that he castles, and as I explained, not only is he castled and we aren't, but the second bad thing is that this queen on e2 actually obstructs the development of our bishop. So he starts developing a very big initiative. White is probably still better, but I didn't want to allow a situation like this. And so we played bishop a3, giving up the pawn back, which allows us to open the d-file and get a huge attack against his king. We have simply more pieces in the game than he does, and he's not able to hold everything together. So takes. If he takes the bishop, we take with a discovered check, and that is devastating. And the rest is very simple. Bishop c5, bishop f8, bringing the bishop back. When you have... This position is also important. Tommy Fukin Shelby is challenging me. Interesting. I gotta play him. All right, I gotta play Tommy. I can't pass up this opportunity. We've never played before. Then I'll continue the game. He is a legend. Okay, so he's playing the Petrov, where we take on e5, and he plays the Stafford gambit. If only I had made a video refuting the Stafford gambit. Well, this is my time for testing. d3 is the move. Now, bishop c5 in the Stafford is typical. Okay? Bishop c5 in the Stafford is typical. And I actually have to remember my own refutation. If I remember correctly, and just give me a second to recall this, I think the move I recommended is bishop e2 first, covering the g4 square. And now we play a very important move, c3. This is the move that refutes the Stafford, because it prepares the move d4, shutting the bishop out, taking it out of commission, and ending all tricks associated with the f2 square. That is the key. Black is simply a pawn down, and he is essentially losing. There's nothing to it. I made a 25-minute video on YouTube where I analyze this in great depth. If you're interested, you're welcome to watch. Now, not to overstate the case here, we still need to win the game. We are up a pawn. but we still need to bring all our pieces out, and we need to convert this, which will not be trivial. But we've done the job of ending the immediate tricks. So let's now develop our pieces. The knight will come out to d2, a nice little square. Notice that our nice little pawn chain in the center is well protected. He's probably going to castle long, which is fine. And if he castles long, we need to start thinking about ways that we can attack his king on the queen side. What can we do here to start the attack on his king? Well, one thing we can do, first of all, he wants to play c5 and undermine our center, which is kind of annoying. Can we do both things at once? We go b4. First of all, we prepare the pawn storm on the queen side. Second of all, we stop him from playing c5, which is very important. The other thing we do is we prepare potentially the maneuver of the knight to c5, where it will be sitting on an outpost. If he takes it, then we open up the b file, and we can use that b file to deliver checkmate potentially. Tommy is great. Okay, so let's see what he does. Yeah, this is what drives people crazy. Now he sacks the... Wow, that is a very strong move, actually. Or that's a very interesting move. I'm not sure it's that strong, but it's interesting because he takes on d4. We have to deal with a couple threats here. Now, what threats do we have to deal with specifically? He's not attacking the rook. That's defended. He's only attacking the bishop. But we need to be very careful about where we put this bishop, because if we drop it to e2, we give the e4 pawn up, and then he develops huge pressure in the center. So where should we put the bishop in order to keep everything relatively nicely protected? We should put it on c2. We should put it on c2. And our goal here is to castle. If we can manage to castle, then any shenanigans associated with white's king and being in the center are going to be immediately ended. That is going to be our immediate priority, to castle. Now, it's a little uncomfortable to be in this position with white, but let's remember that we're up a piece, and he has no real threats. It's always... Okay, so he makes a very strong move, bishop c4, stopping us from castling. But the reality is black doesn't have enough pieces in the game to truly inflict any damage on our position. Let's bring the bishop back to e3, get this queen out of our grill. It can actually come to c3, but then we're going to pick this queen off with another piece. An unexpected hero is going to make its way out of the gate. What am I talking about? What is white's move here? To try to get this queen out of the picture. Yeah, he's coming at me, but it's fine. Yeah, rook c1. Let's bring the rook in. Let's try to get this queen out of here. No, he's playing very, very well. Tommy is good. Tommy is very good. Let's get this queen out of here. He plays a brilliant move again. But let's get that queen out of here. Now, we finally managed to get the queen out of our face. But we still have the problem now of not being able to castle, and the culprit is this bishop on c4. Let's try to win this bishop. Can we win this bishop? Charlotte Chesson is still here. Not rook b1. Look at the skewer. Kinetic energy. Not rook b1. Rook b1, queen a6. Come on, guys. Find the move. Bishop a4, yeah. Queen is overloaded. We can take with the rook, and we win the game. Oh, but he does have an idea. And then I'll switch back to blitz. Okay. He takes on d2. We just don't want to take with the queen, because then the bishop on a4 is lost. Let's take with the bishop. And then maybe drop the bishop back to b3. Okay. We're going to see where he goes. Let's go bishop b3, trading the bishop. Then that queen's going to be stopping us from castling. It's a lifelong battle. But getting the queen out of a6 is going to be very easy. We can just interpose it with our own queen, which will come to c4. And finally, not only will be up a rook, but we are finally ready to castle. In fact, this forces the queen trade, because we are in effect forking his queen and the knight on e4. So he's got to take. He takes this. He loses the knight. And finally, we are going to be able to castle, and we're going to win. So... Again, I don't care about this pawn on e4. That's not important. What is important is that we got rid of his bishop. Now we got rid of his queen. And we are ready to castle and force the queen trade. Good game, Tommy. Okay. 1 second, please. Okay. Yeah, that was the Stafford. As you can see, even with the refutation, it's there are some latent ideas there, but by and large, if you're very careful, you should be able to ward off the threats. So e5 in what position? E5 in which position? C3 is C3 is the refutation. Yeah. I'm not one of several. After queen b5. Well, the move e5, he can actually take on e5, for example. And if knight takes e4, we lose the queen with check. So, and also, remember that, I guess you wanted to go bishop f5 check and then win the bishop, but maybe he can even drop it to d7 and then you don't have a discovery with the bishop. So, but the main reason I wouldn't play e5 is because of queen takes e5. Knight takes c4 after bishop c4 is possible, but this creates some discomfort because if you move your queen, you allow a fork. If you move it to c1, then this gets very, very dangerous. He takes on e4, he gets his rook to e8, and it's very, very, very nasty. So I think I actually played it accurately. We have to be careful in such positions. But that was basically the lay of the land.